Welcome back to the Battle of Hardin Pike. This is basically the same battle as Halls Ferry, it's just different setup and a little bit harder. Because of this, I'm going to be going in with almost the exact same army setup. You can see I've just topped everything off again. One of those 2-star units I gave some Harper's Ferries because I was running out of Enfields. And I realized that one of my 10-pounder units probably can get 2 stars. You can see that several of those newer units were able to rank up, and when I throw a Major General into this one, I can get the extra perk for him as well. But otherwise, pretty much the exact same setup as last time. There were a couple of units in here that were 2 stars that I was able to put generals in to get to 3-star, and then a few that are pretty close but not quite there yet. So hopefully we'll be able to get them up to 3-star for prior to Washington, but we'll see how it goes. I did spend, I think, like 10,000 to get the scout unit back up to 400. They can sometimes take a lot of losses, so I decided to, it was worth the investment to keep the extra perk in, keep them 3-star. Probably not a good idea overall, but in this case I have money to waste, so I decided I'd use it. So this is going to take me a little bit to get all the units set up. I set up 3 lines of one of 10-pounders, one of 20-pounders, and then one of 24-pounders, so it makes it a little easier to keep track of where they all are and keep them all at the ranges they should be. While I'm doing that, I'll briefly talk about some of the balance differences between the modded version of the game that I'm playing currently and the base game. The 2 big ones are that units above a certain size always deal more damage than smaller sized units, which is not true in the base game. That varies a little bit by unit type. If you want more details, let me know and I can direct you to links in the comments. But that's something I've talked about quite a bit in the past. But mostly, especially the way I'm playing, where I'm not using units above the optimal sizes in the base game, I'm not really getting any advantage of that. I'm actually just going to be hurting myself because the AI frequently has units that are over that cap, especially their artillery and their snipers, and those have caused me a lot of extra losses, a lot of extra headaches trying to get rid of those units. So I think in my case, I think that's only been a disadvantage for me compared to the base game. If you're playing on lower difficulties where oversized units and 3-star units are not as common, I think that's going to turn into a little bit more of an advantage for the player. This is also especially true for the other main component that affects balance, is fixing the perks. The big winners here are 3-star artillery and melee cavalry, in that those unique bonuses for charge damage and shot shell or canister damage all actually work. So those units all become much more dangerous. So again, I think overall I would say it's probably a wash. It's hurt me in cases where I have to actually go in and engage their artillery, but it's helped me in that once I've built up my own 3-star units, I can make my long-range artillery very effective, which is part of what gives me such good results in this battle and the previous one. Though I will say you can do this exact same setup in the base game, and it's basically going to work. You probably need a little bit more infantry because you're going to have a hard time killing off quite as much with your artillery as effectively, but you can double the casualties that you take, that I'm going to take easily, and still come out of this wildly ahead. So I think I'd say in general the perk bonuses have probably helped me as much as hurt me. I think the size bonuses are a little more impactful. But anyways, so as you can see, I brought in a bunch of artillery, brought in some spotters. We're working on getting rid of the first artillery battery. This isn't quite as easy as Halls Ferry, where you know exactly where all the artillery batteries are. There's a couple that are out in the open, but only like 1 or 2 that you really have to care about. There are also 20-pounders here, so that makes just moving your units around in the open a little more hazardous. Though there's only like 3 or 4 20-pounder units, and you can get rid of those pretty easily. So it's, again, not too big a problem. So the first goal is to get these infantry units out of the trees. You can see that they sort of walk in and out, and that there's kind of a vision hole in there, so you got to be a little careful. The goal is I want to get rid of those entirely, and then I'm going to move most of my artillery up into those woods so I can start clearing out this northern point. And I just have some of my leftover units down south working on some of the artillery down there. I could probably bring these up north and just clear that area faster, but you kind of start running out of space, so I figure I am going to hit both areas at the same time. Also, you may have noticed that I've been targeting enemy generals when they show up, just so it becomes a little bit easier to keep these units from walking back into the fortifications and lets me move up. The longer it takes them to regen their morale, the farther away they move, and so the farther back they are when I want to try and get my units in position. Okay, so it looks like we've mostly cleared out that line. The supply wagon is annoyingly in my way. I can't quite get to it. Even if I mounted up the cavalry and tried to run for it, I'm going to take at least 2 volleys from infantry, and multiple artillery units are going to hit me. So just not worth it. But at this point I've cleared enough. I can send the 24-pounders up, and I've got vision of the first 20-pounder unit, so I can get rid of him, and once he's gone, then I can pretty much move wherever I want on this side of the map. So you can see that artillery is definitely very strong. Don't want to walk my infantry into that, so we're going to try and get rid of all of it before we have to go in there. So you have pretty good cover even in the open here. Like, they don't have any obnoxious vision points or anything like that as far as I can tell. So I'm able to move most of my artillery up into the open. I don't really need to worry about having infantry to cover it. The AI is, again, very passive in this battle up until you start taking victory points, so you can largely just leave units unsupported, and just the only thing you have to watch for is them coming forward back into fortifications. It's also, again, very important to try and keep your basically everything but the 10-pound parrots. You want to try and keep at their optimal ranges, which means 10-pound parrots want to be as far away as possible, though I'm definitely slacking a little bit in that, just because there's a lot of bugs I've found when trying to give artillery orders to target something out of range, so it's just easier to move them a little bit closer and then just be able to target things without having to worry about them glitching out and not firing. And then the 20-pounders and 24-pounders all want to be as close as you can reasonably get them, because they're just going to do more damage the closer they are. So, got the first artillery unit, got the second one spotted. This can get a little problematic if the AI has stealth perks on those artillery units. If that happens, you have to start pushing the scout unit up further and further to try and see them, and you'll usually end up taking higher losses than that, because you're eventually going to mess up and get spotted and then have to back up a little bit. You get hit every time you do that, so just the number of casualties you take is directly dependent on how many times you have to move forward like that. Doing pretty well so far. I've only taken, I think, one sniper unit got exposed once and got hit, but overall this is pretty clean so far. And down south, you can see we've gotten rid of one artillery unit, spotted a second one, so going to work on that. And you can see with this much artillery, we spotted a third one. You can see how fast you can reduce those units, even in good fortifications. See some of the infantry coming forward. You got to watch out for that a little bit. I'm sending the infantry unit in the north up there, because sometimes units like to try and route up there, and they just keep routing. If they keep routing north-south, then eventually they start harassing your artillery that you want to push forward. There is a third artillery unit in the northeast section of this victory point, which is why I'm not pushing units too much further forward, because they tend to get spotted and then they get shot from there. Also sending the scout unit up and around, because now that I've killed the 3 artillery units on this side of the fortification, I want to see if I can spot the other one on the far side so I can take him out. Usually that's one that is harder to get until you get infantry in there, but if you can get it earlier, then that'll end up saving you some losses. So at this point, I should have noticed that my 24-pounder down there was not hidden, was taking fire. It's going to take me a little while to notice, and I'm going to lose quite several guns down there, just because I didn't catch it in time. So it's the downside of using close-range artillery when you don't have the stealth perk, is sometimes they get spotted, and if you don't notice, you can lose a lot of guns pretty quickly. But fortunately, we have a large surplus of 24-pounders at this point, so, and those units are 1 star, so it's not really going to cost us too much. But you can see how these 24-pounders that do have the cover perk, you can see how close I can bring them without getting spotted. It's a little ridiculous. Also worth noting, you don't have to capture both victory points by the timer. You actually have until 1530. I'm pretty sure this is another scenario where you only have to have the flags contested when 1530 comes around, which gives you some extra time, because you don't have to wait for them to tick down either. Pretty sure you can contest them and click finish. I don't end up doing that, but from what I remember, that's what you can do. So the traditional way you get through this battle is you just bring a bunch of infantry, bulk up an attack column, bring a little bit of artillery, blow your way through the first outer layer of trenches, and then you just use a massed column assault and punch your way through to the victory points in like the last hour, and then just click finish once they're both contested. That's considerably more expensive in casualties though, and I have a good enough sniper and artillery corps that I can just take my time and take out a bunch of units. You can see I finally noticed that my artillery is taking damage, and I've lost, what, 130 men out of that artillery unit. Just more casualties on an artillery unit than some of mine have taken in probably the entire campaign. Just a little unfortunate, but again, we can replace those losses. So we've almost got that artillery unit gone, and then we'll just need to spend a little bit of time to clear stuff out of the front, and then we can send in the infantry. This is about the time I usually start going for the first victory point. I like to be able to try and have it close to captured or captured by around the timer. That gives me a little bit of time to clear out the freestanding infantry units behind that victory point, and then resupply my artillery a little bit from the 2 spots that you can capture there, and then from there I can reposition all of my artillery and most of my infantry down south to take the second victory location. I don't do anything about the fort in the northeast. If you got regressive, you could probably take it out, but the timer is a bit tight enough, and I can't quite justify trying to go after it when I really need those units to be dealing with the southern victory location. So I think we killed 3 generals so far, so that's going to help a little bit. As the infantry starts going through, I spread out the snipers so that they can keep targeting stuff on the flanks. Pause a little bit for that unit to run around. Run over to try and get a flank shot on it. Mostly succeed. But you can see the infantry can largely just walk straight into this area. And our artillery is all right behind them, so we're going to have a lot of fire support, even though a lot of that artillery is out of ammunition at this point. There are a few wagons in this battle. Sometimes they go places, like if they sort of run into the northeast and other units don't run up there, then you can sort of get them there sometimes, but often, usually it's kind of hard to get to any of them. Also, you can see the snipers going south and north. They're all not spotted. Again, I think the vision is just really poor for the AI in this map, which is very beneficial. Usually that's working against us, but helps us out this time around. So you still have to be careful a little bit, but generally you can move around pretty freely. So we've taken the fort. We've still got line of units on the backside. Bringing all the 24-pounders up and moving a bunch of the 20-pounders up. You do have to be careful if you sort of set up in the downslope of this hill. You can have trouble targeting stuff over the side. But I want to bring a lot of the artillery in so they get in range of those supply points, and then I can refill from them. Sadly, it does not appear possible to refill your supply wagons from those points. Otherwise, I just plop the supply wagons on top of them, refill, and then move elsewhere to go deal with stuff. So that unit down south ended up getting routed. I think it's a combination of artillery fire from the southern Victory Point area, and I don't think it was. I think it was not firing at that unit in the fortification, so it got to sit there and get some free shots off. But we're just going to slide the whole line down, and we'll back that unit that's morale shocked out once we can. And that should be almost the last of resistance down south, and we'll be able to start getting these units hidden again. Bring more of the 20-pounders up to get them in resupply range. But we've almost got that last artillery in the open there, and once we've got that, we'll just be able to push everything up and get these last guys out of the woods. This is one of the two spots where it's pretty much unavoidable. You're going to take losses. You need way more time to actually be able to clear the position entirely with just artillery. So sending some infantry to occupy the woods in the center. Sometimes late in the battle, the AI will still send units out there to try and take possession of it. And I want to get some artillery and snipers into that area, so I want to have infantry there, so if a unit walks across, then I can just have them route it quickly without having to take any losses from it. So we got a charge, not a big deal. They're going to get hit from all sides in a second. They'll go away. Finally see that artillery unit that's been giving us trouble, so redirect everything on there. You can see we're starting to open up the South Victory Point already, even though we haven't dedicated any of our really good units towards it. At the moment I'm thinking of, okay, I want to be able to trap all this stuff in the corner and take it out. So I'm going to send some extra infantry up there, and I'm moving the snipers up. Because if I could clear that section, then I might actually start trying to move down, and I probably still wouldn't go after the fort, but there's just a bunch of infantry standing around there, and it would be good to clear them out. And I screw up. I send the snipers too far forward, and I don't really have units covering. So I'm trying to get my skirmishers in between, but so I don't take a volley, but I don't quite manage it. Looks like that unit is morale shocked though, so we avoided it there. Well, okay, they were morale shocked for a second and then they managed to pull off a volley, but I'd rather have that happen than hit my skirmishers. Something I should have commented on earlier, I didn't quite have Lee with me at the start of when I started pushing the infantry up. That would have been good. It might have stopped that unit in the south from getting morale shocked. Just didn't keep track of him when I was moving everything else up. I only have one general. I'm using the artillery corps commander again, who doesn't have rank 3, so he doesn't have any sort of aura. Having a second general that has the cover perk would be useful, but there's so few battles where I want the artillery perk that I just never got a general set up for it. I probably could have gone and found a lieutenant general somewhere, but they're usually busy keeping units with 3 stars, so I think it's a better use of my time. So just backing up the infantry a little bit, so if the charge lands, it's going to start getting hit by the unit in the trees first. Just trying to ensure we have a nice concave up there. Could have stayed in place, but there's no reason to ever sit and receive charges like that in most cases. You always want to fall back at least just a little bit, get a little bit better concave, and let them wear themselves out. I see a lot of players who just sit there and allow their units to get run into by charges, and I just don't. Unless you're just too spread thin for attention or don't have any room to retreat, I don't think there's any reason to ever do that. You know, the charge bonus doesn't do a whole lot, but it does give them extra melee damage, and if you can, you always want to try and cancel that or have it run out of steam if you manage it. So you can see that unit charges in, gets hit from 5 different units at once, and back out it goes. So starting to bring the artillery down. I'm actually, I'd say, a little behind schedule at this point. Like, I kind of want to be getting this set up, but I've been a little more distracted by units in the north than I have been in the past. You can see there's a lot of infantry units that sort of walk back and forth around the battlefield. I'm not quite sure if they're unallocated or what exactly is going on, but the AI will try and walk around a lot like that, which actually is just good for you as it lets you have plenty of time to get flank shots from all over the place or hit them with snipers or whatever else. So you'll see a lot of units walking around, but they don't really ever organize into an actual attack, so it's not too dangerous. So I was able to reveal that infantry unit on the side there, brought the scout unit down to be able to see it. And if we can get rid of him, that means there's only, I think, one other artillery unit that's going to be in range of where we need to go to get to the, I guess, in canister range of the victory point. I should probably be putting infantry in position right now, and I should probably be shifting more artillery, especially more 24-pounders and stuff down there. I'm just not going to, like, there's nothing that's really going to attack me up at the top. I say that as a bunch of infantry walks forward, but those units are all so depleted, they're going to walk into, like, I could leave 1 or maybe 2 24-pounders up there, and then all those units are just going to disintegrate anytime they come forward. Normally I try and launch my attack on the other victory point with about an hour remaining, so I'd want to do it in about 20 minutes. You can see I'm not set up for it at all, though. Again, managing charges and stuff up here rather than really looking at the situation further south and moving stuff around to accommodate it. But at least we almost got that artillery unit gone. And the couple of the infantry units there are kind of beat down. So if we knock out a couple more of those units, then we'll be in pretty decent shape to go in. Though again, really I should already probably be in position and about to kick off that advance right now. Not that big a deal, it gives us more time for the artillery to work, which is never really a bad thing. But I think I definitely wanted to have moved down the artillery and stuff a little bit earlier. Instead, I'm screwing around with snipers up top, which not really the best use of my time. So moving the snipers forward so I can hopefully get some of those units out of there. And now because I move those skirmishers forward, I get exposed and charged, and again I don't have units in position. There's definitely a black hole up there in terms of vision. And we don't pull it off. I should have flipped the sniper unit around and fallen back so I didn't take the flanking damage. So at this point I think is when I realized that I'm really behind schedule and just sort of send the infantry in. Pulling back the 2 stars, I really don't want them to go in first. I'm going to have to charge to clear this in time. So I really don't want to send because I don't want the 2 stars to be at the front of that, because whoever charges first is going to have to keep charging for a little bit. And that means they're going to end up damaged from the melee, exhausted, and in the middle of another unit, and probably in canister range of something. So should probably be using a little bit more detached skirmishers to take the initial waves of fire from stuff. I'm always trying to charge 2 units at 1 target, so we get the melee penalty applied to them. So our musket unit gets ripped apart. Should probably be pulling back 14-1 and that other rifle unit. They're far enough forward. I should be hitting fallback to try and get them out of there. We can see that last artillery unit, so we're going to try and get rid of him. And this is also where, again, I didn't quite manage stuff right. I have too many infantry units up north. I need at least 1 more down south to flank the outer line of defenses that's hitting me on my flank. Because I don't quite have enough units there to keep it clear. Like, I guess maybe I should move the musket unit down there. So I definitely mismanaged this part a little bit. I think if I had done this a little better, I could have probably cut off at least 500 to 1,000 casualties if I just managed this section a little better. If I'd managed to expose that artillery up north and clear it out before I have to do this, then I wouldn't be taking flanking fire from there. I'm not quite sure if I would have had time to do that. But having a unit further in the south to clear that outer line of defenses so I wasn't not getting flanked here would have allowed me to roll up this line a lot better. But as you can see, we've taken the flag. Casualties are overall very low. And there we go. That's about 3,000 casualties, which is about 2,500 after medicine. And I think we killed about 3,600. Let's see, I had the numbers over here. Yeah, almost 3,700, so that's about 15-1. So not quite as good as Halls Ferry, but still very, very good and well under the amount of reinforcements we're going to get for this. This is, again, another battle that was clearly intended for you to have to just smash your way through with infantry and take a lot of losses. But once you know how to exploit vision and build up a big enough artillery army, you can just kill it off without having to do a whole lot. Just because the AI is so passive, you can see it, I just don't need infantry because they don't come after me. See, a couple of those artillery units that I wasn't able to completely clear out are the ones that inflicted most of the losses. And then a whole bunch of units who never got to fire at anything. And we even managed to keep our scout unit from taking a lot of casualties, which probably a first. Good promotions. Mostly 24-pound howitzers, which isn't great, but made the battle easier. Certainly replaced the losses we took. A few more 20-pounders, which is nice. Be able to push a couple units up to 12. And some more 63s and 61s, which is always useful. We're going to have quite a bit of good rifles to be able to equip our units with. Which is good, because we're sitting at 45,000 unassigned troops. Looks like we didn't get any promotions here, though we might be close on a couple of them. The units that needed it didn't quite get the kills that I would have needed to push them over the edge, but it's alright. 2 stars is still pretty good. And maybe we'll be able to hit it by day 2 of Washington. It's possible. The 1 sniper unit took a hit, but everyone else came out mostly okay, so not too bad, and we still have plenty of replacement rifles. Maybe I should have gotten rid of that Weird unit, but I don't know. It does pretty well. The Weird is a very good cannon. Wish you could get more of them as the Confederates. But, you know, we took decently high casualties on those infantry units, but still very, very easy to stack them back up. Just generic reinforcement. So we're at 73 training, 78 armory. Well, those are pretty high in my opinion. Like, I think the last time around that I got here, I was looking at like 50 or 60 training. So, and I think the weapons was a bit lower, and the only people I've been able to compare against also had lower values. So I think I've been a little unlucky there, despite having killed so many. But again, we have, what, 92,000 versus 123 on day 1, and we haven't even scaled up. We have 45k. We can probably we can take those extra 8,000 men. So that's going to put us, what, 145,000? Because we'll be able to equip all those men with something or other. We've got 460 in the bank right now, and we'll be able to get plenty more from selling off weapons that we aren't going to use. So we should be able to kit out every last one of those men, even if they aren't going to make terribly good use of a lot of those weapons. Okay, so that was another example of how you just win the game with artillery and spotters. I will be back soon with Washington. That one's probably going to take a little longer to put together, as that's a long battle as is. And I need to decide how much of the camp process I'm going to show. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of it that's anything new or interesting in the camp, but I might show a little more of it than I have in the past, just because I'm going to be setting up with quite a few new units. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon to wrap up this campaign.